Good afternoon, all, and thank you for joining us for another Secret Sunday session today. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Julie, all the way from New Zealand. And today, we're going to be talking about child nutrition as well as the pressure it can sometimes be put on parents to be a quality parent. So, to kick us off, like always, Julie, do you just want to explain to us who you are and what it is that you were doing with yourself?
Ooh, I always find that question really hard, but yeah. Hi, I'm Dr. Julie. So I am New Zealand's leading baby and toddler nutritionist, and also specialize in just overall family well-being. I finished my PhD in 2015, and I'm a mum to 3 boys. So I'm very much about bringing peer-reviewed scientific research strategies in a very practical way for parents, and research will tell us that's what's missing too. So since I finished my PhD, I've gone on to publish numerous books that specialize in that area, as well as cookbooks, and I've started a food brand as well, which we're still in ground floor stages of, but very much trying to bridge that gap between nutritious homemade food and or as the most nutritious that we can get, in more readily available options, and also in packaging that's friendly for our environment too. So yeah, that's me.
Congratulations, what a journey.
Thanks.
For leading that in New Zealand and having an impact around the world. That's phenomenal to really build on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Especially in this world that we're living in today, there's so many mixed messages and there's so many things that you should do and that you shouldn't do, and you shouldn't eat. How do parents or families know what to do when there is so much out there? How do they simplify?
They struggle. That's the bottom line, is they struggle. And I've been doing this work and research now for sort of coming up to a decade intensively, and it's actually getting harder, not easier, because we've got like the volume of information that parents get through phones and social media, and I'm on social media, so it's sort of a double-edged sword. But for parents, very tired, exhausted parents, trying to dissect all of that, and often we get people with reasonable social profiles, kind of cherry picking bits of research that might be kind of like, or abstracts that might be freely available on the internet without the background or the training to actually critique that. And then, of course, we've got the power of the food industry, and the heavy marketing, the massive loopholes that are there. And, because of COVID-19 as well, parents are effectively trying to raise their kids in very isolated environments. I think we're starting to come out of that finally. But it's definitely been really, really tough. And so I'm like, I don't even know where we start with all of that. I'm actually almost glad I'm not a new parent in this, right now, right today. I mean, it was still hard when I was, but yeah, it's more so now.
Do you find it a barrier as well that you have all these Insta influencers out there that are promoting their shopping trolleys or promoting what you should be eating, and then you always come back to scientific research?
Yeah.
How do you push that research when you're fighting against people with millions of followers?
It's not easy. It's really, really not. I feel like I'm a small voice in a very big pond. And, like all challenges with social media is that the extremes get the attention, and this is not just for infant nutrition. This is health and well-being as a whole, right? And it's because too, we want the quick fix. We want if I do this, everything's going to be magically solved. And when it comes to so many parts of our well-being, whether it's mental health, whether it's nutrition, whether it's movement, it's that slow, consistent, long term. But that doesn't sell, that doesn't get likes, that's not exciting. So we've got kind of that into the mix too, but a big part of what I do is always bringing it back to peer-reviewed academic research, but trying to keep it like real bite-sized, because obviously people aren't going to read like a whole peer-reviewed academic article, but it's like there is magic in that, but we've just got to keep giving it in a practical way.
And if we look at parenting as a whole, do you think there's unrealistic expectations on parents or mums in particular to live up to a certain standard?
Of course there is. Of course there is. And, that's part of our journey too as a parent, is trying to figure out what are our priorities, and I'm very open about this, within my online community, because while nutrition is a top priority for me, I live and breathe it. There are other things that we can't do. Like my youngest is 3, so he's still in nappies. So I've had children in nappies for 10 years, and I have not been able to use like reusable nappies at all. I've used disposable nappies for 10 years. Do I feel guilty about that? Of course. I've got a food brand, with a key message to, strive for zero waste. We're not going to be perfect. We're not perfect human beings. So, trying to kind of strive for that, you're going to set yourself up to fail. But at the same time, we also know that these things are important. So, I don't like the term moderation. I don't think that serves us, because there are some things that we can't be moderate in, and we don't live in a moderate world. The food environment is set up against us. So we can't have moderation because the scale is not even. But at the same time, we also have got to let the pressure off somewhere, somehow. And I think the mental load that, and I'm going to call it as it is, which is mothers carry, is astronomical. Like it is. I know it myself, and I see it in literally every single woman that I work with. And like, it breaks my heart, because it shouldn't be this way, but it is. And would I love it to be equal? Absolutely. Absolutely. I probably will have at least 5 daily rants about it. And, I'm trying to raise, my 3 biological boys quite differently in that regard, but I don't know if I'll achieve it. Yeah.
That pressure comes from the person within themselves, or society and their standards?
Both, but I would say it's definitely societal driven. Yeah. And as women, we take that on board. We are raised pretty much from the moment that we're born to please. That our value is on, this is even to start with, on being a mother. There's a huge percentage of biological females where that's perhaps not what they want to do, and we haven't even cracked that part yet as a society. And so if you're not a mother and you're not a wife, well, who are you? So absolutely, it starts from the outside, and then it comes from our own desire to want to meet not just that, but all aspects. Definitely, I would be very surprised if there was a parent there that didn't feel like they were failing in some capacity or shape or form, or go to bed at night and run through the list of all the things that you didn't do or didn't achieve or could have or should have done better. I'm still a work in progress on that myself. Yeah.
Wow. Do you think that, or why do you think that society or people around us judge us based on how we bring up our kids, how we feed our kids, what we do with our kids? Why do we think that judgment is so apparent at the moment, and people have the need or feel they have the need to have a say about it?
I don't know. I think that's a great question, and it's very intense in the early days, and then from how you give birth to where you give birth to did you do it with, you know, drug-free or not drug-free, to how you feed your children in terms of breastfeeding or formula, you know. And I've been very open and honest about my struggles as someone, you know, in public health with my own breastfeeding, you know, struggles with that and the pressure that I felt in that regard, you know. And even in the blog that I wrote, it's like, you know, we go to these hospitals and they have like, you know, breast is best, but you know what happens when you go to a supermarket? Well, you don't have water is best above Coca-Cola signs, or you know, vegetables are best over lolly signs. So you know, like it's as I said, it's very intense in those early days when you are the most raw, and then it sort of starts to peter off. But yeah, I mean, in terms of why we judge, and it's funny because it always comes down to mums, right? Like people don't look at dads and are like, oh, your child is eating that. They're like, oh wow, you fed your children today, you get a gold star. So you know, it's very much eyes on mum with that. You know, just adding to that mental load. I don't know why, you know. And even in coffee groups, which are meant to be places of support for a lot of mums, they can be some of the most competitive environments that I've ever seen. And it's like, well, everyone's trying to get their babies to eat, everyone's trying to get their babies to sleep. Some are working, some are not working. It doesn't make it better or worse, or it's all hard. The bottom line is it's all hard, no matter what you do. So yeah, great question. I'm not sure, but I know some of the variables that are there.
It's a crazy world, even when I'm, you know, in a group of friends or, you know, around certain mothers, and the judgment that just comes out at how they're feeding their child, or whether they're smacking or not smacking, and it's blown up even in the media now. And you look at it and go, everyone's just doing the best that they can, but that seems to never be enough.
Yeah. And like I thought it would stop when my, you know, kids got a little bit older, but you know, my oldest is about to turn 10, and it just gets into it like a different flavor, you know, the clothes that they wear, and you know, the holiday programs that they're going to. And don't even get me started on parents on the sideline of sport, you know. Like I kept my kids from organized sport for as long as I could, and now we're right in the throes of that. And I'm just like, wow, I'm like, these guys are 10. We're talking about 10-year-olds. Seriously, we don't need to be talking about the Olympics right now. They're 10, trying to navigate, you know, preteen stuff. Yeah, it just keeps going.
Yeah, it's really sad. And I feel as well that people judge you based on how your kids turn out as a result of how you've parented. And at the end of the day, it's your kids are a human being, and they grow up and they learn about themselves and who they want to be, and that shouldn't be a reflection of how you parent. So yeah, it's a really difficult environment. But I want to shift over now to child nutrition. Looking at that, do they actually need certain amounts of nutrients at certain ages?
Yeah, great question. Yes, they do. And, you know, we know the first 1,000 days, so that's from the second of conception. So actually when they're in utero, you know, right through into the age of 2 is a very vulnerable period. And that's right in my area of specialty. My new book that's just about to come out is actually tackling pregnancy. And, you know, there's, to be honest, across all these first 1,000 days, the nutrients that we need are similar. So, or the major ones, iron, protein, fat. I mean, veggies as a whole food group and all the goodness that they provide is a given. But my big focus is always around iron, protein, and fat, because these tend to be things that are not promoted, not encouraged. Food industry obviously does an abysmal job at providing, and where we see the biggest deficiencies, and it has a very long-term ramifications in the future. For babies in their first year of life, they need 10 to 11 milligrams of iron a day from 6 months to 1 year. To give some perspective, that is more than a grown male adult requires. in a day, and that's because it's a period of high cognitive or brain development. And what we've seen in peer-reviewed academic research is that even for babies, so if they experience iron deficiency across that time, even if that deficiency is recovered, we actually see cognitive delays into adulthood now. So it's what I say to parents is it's not something to be afraid of, but knowledge is power. And it's quite a delicate topic, but we are in an age where vegan and vegetarian diets are very popular, and we don't have the research. Ultimately, we do not have the research to support those for a very vulnerable population of infants. And as I said, it's a very delicate topic. Aware of the reasons for and against it, but in terms of iron intake, it's a massive consideration.
Wow, it is, and that whole vegan environment is such a popular thing at the moment. Are you finding then, if parents are influencing kids to go vegan or go vegetarian, that there are long-term effects of that?
There is, and like exactly what we've said. It's not to say that you can't do it, but you absolutely have to do it with professional advice, and there are a lot of things to weigh up with that. And again, what I say to parents is it is a hard choice, as in it will be harder to feed your children. And as someone who works in public health, I actually can't in good faith endorse those diets myself. I can say that you are able to do it with some help and support, but there's some huge considerations with that. And again, like you spoke about, well, that's the difference between someone with a big social media profile who can kind of just say whatever they want. I can't. I can't. I work, I'm trained in public health. I work in public health, and I cannot advocate for a diet that effectively cuts out major sources of nutrients at all. And that's where we're at the moment. And I have to advocate for our vulnerable population, which is our babies, who don't get any say at all. It's not to say that it's good or bad. There's just considerations with it, and people need to make a very informed, educated choice, which I tend to find that they don't.
And then some parents may look to supplements then to fill that gap, that nutrient gap. Do you think that is necessary and that's actually helpful for a child to be taking supplements at such a young age?
Oh, good question. In some cases, it's non-negotiable. So if you are wanting to raise a baby or an infant on a vegan diet, they must be supplemented with B12, because they will not get that from any other source at all. I see many social media influencers that don't talk about that at all, which I think is just dangerous, to be honest. And I mean, this is the thing with nutrition, right? Is there's always pros and cons and things to weigh up. I think in terms of food preferences and food choices, that's something that you'd have to weigh up as a parent, because the exposure that a child gets, especially in those first 1,000 days, but definitely up until the age of 5, is going to shape their food choices for life. Supplements, while it may provide the nutrients that you're not able to get, it will do nothing in that regard in terms of food choices. I can't tell parents what to do. You've just got to kind of weigh all of that up, I guess, with what's right for you and your family, and why, and trying to keep in mind that you are raising a child that will become an independent adult and make their own choices.
I believe we're growing up in a world where there's so many intolerances and there's so many new illnesses that people are experiencing in relation to food. Do you believe that there is a rise in intolerances, or it's people just being more sensitive to food?
it's a little bit of both. And so there's a clear difference between allergy and intolerance. With intolerances, they tend to be to the big things like dairy and gluten, and I don't believe we should be eating huge volumes of those to start with. They don't provide a huge amount of the key nutrients that we require. So if someone is intolerant, which means that they can actually have some, the question is volume. I'm sort of like, well, it's almost a no-brainer, right? Because, you know, I mean, people aren't going to be intolerant to vegetables. I mean, some will sort of talk about that in terms of the old school FODMAP diets. I've got quite a critical view on that. But, you know, I mean, gut health to me is central, and it's incredibly fascinating. Everyone has a different, I call it like a gut garden. And there's other things that can affect gut health and therefore intolerance, but it's what comes first, right? If you've got people that are struggling with sleep, and this includes babies and toddlers, and any parent listening will know that it's not a straightforward thing, sleep, but sometimes that can be associated with, you know, some gut irritation. And so it's not the food that's at the root of it, it's the constant broken sleep that's affecting the master clock of our circadian rhythm, but it will show up in food as opposed to the other way around. So I think it's very complex. We are a little bit more aware of it, but it's also trendy as well. Yeah. At least in adults, you know, to be like that. I mean, technically I could easily say that I'm both gluten and dairy intolerant, but that's just because we shouldn't be having a lot of it.
Yeah. I love that. It is. It's a new world that we're living in where everyone's got some sort of sensitivity or some sort of, they're more intuitive to how they're feeling with, which I believe is great. It's a great environment, but it's becoming a lot more complex with a lot more information out there. Turning and looking towards the concept of kids being fussy eaters, do you believe that kids are fussy, and why if they are?
Oh, I love this question. And like every parent of a toddler, it's a challenge. Yeah, kids are fussy, but we have a very negative connotation around the word fussy. To be fussy, it means to be particular. And it's actually something we want in our children. We want them to be particular. It's just very frustrating when they're particular about their food. But, you know, we want them to be particular about the things that they like and don't like, who they play with. You know, I would like my boys to be very particular about who they date and the careers that they choose. But yeah, and so we think we can try and like cull that out of our children. Well, that's not helpful for them at all. But in terms of why it shows up with food, is because it's something that we need to do, like at least for children, minimum 3, sometimes 5 times a day. But because of the food environment where we've got this overabundance available, the question that children ask, and this is pretty much right from when they take their first mouthful, it's not, am I going to eat? Their inquiry is, what am I going to eat? And there's a really big difference with that. You know, hungry children will eat. Most adults cannot override the sensation of hunger for a very long period of time. The more strong-willed ones of us will hold out for a little bit longer, yep, but eventually our hormones will win. Now, we are highly rational adults, like full control of our impulses, or at least those that are above 25. So for a toddler who does not have those impulse controls, at least until they're 5, they actually cannot override that. But as I said, if they will ask, if they say no and something else is offered, well, of course they're going to say no the first time. And this is in peer-reviewed academic research, is that our parenting style and our parenting strategies is directly associated with how fussiness presents in a child. So I don't think we can prevent fussiness, but we can manage it with some really good boundaries, basically, and strategies. And our children need it. They are seeking it. It provides them safety and security. And your more strong-willed children, and I know I've got 2 of them, I've got one more easygoing child, they will push the boundaries further. They will. And children that are biological boys will push more than girls because they have 10 times the volume of testosterone, and that drives aggression. And so if you've got this is what I would say, if you've got a strong-willed biological boy, you take the cake or the wine. But it just means that you need some firmer parenting strategies in place. Anyway, can you tell I'm really passionate about this topic because I haven't stopped talking?
I love it. And specifically, we talk about kids being fussy when it comes to vegetables.
Yep.
Because it is a food source that we do need, and as you mentioned, you need it in those younger years. How are you supposed to encourage your fussy eaters to eat vegetables?
Yeah, good question. It's a long-term game. It's not a you do this and they're going to instantly eat it. A framework that I use is called the division of responsibility, and it's incredibly powerful, and it firmly separates out what is our children or our toddlers' responsibility when it comes to eating, and then what is our responsibility as parents. And more often than not, as parents, we are trying to do what is our child's responsibility. But the more that we can keep the responsibility on if they will eat and how much they will eat on our toddler, the better it is in the long term. But as I said, we try and for all sorts of reasons, the way that we were brought up, or our fear, or what we were talking about before, like, are we going to fail as a parent if our child doesn't eat dinner? No, that's not a definition of whether you've failed or succeeded as a parent at all. But that I probably won't have heaps of time to unpack it in full detail, but that division of responsibility is really powerful. And also actually respecting the word no. How many parents, when we ask our children, are you hungry? And they say no, do we just go, okay? Or is it, well, what about this? Or if you have just one bite of this, or can you just have one lick of this? Or if you do this, I will give you 5 stars on your star chart. So we should not be bribing or rewarding children for eating at all. That will get you a very short-term result, terrible for long-term behavior change. Also, I'm of the firm belief that eating is just something you should do. You do not need praise to eat, because where does that end for you as a parent? Not at all. And this is hard because for most of us, we're not brought up this way, right? And that word no is important, though, because when we override our toddler when they say no, we're actually teaching them that the word no has no power. So when we say no, what are they going to do? Ignore it. And don't even get me started on very important topics like consent. Where we want to teach our children, as I said, right from day one, no means no, and that's 2 ways. Yeah, so if they say no, or we say no, and we're not listening to that, it's not going to be helpful in any regard.
All I can think about is the concept when I was growing up that if you don't finish your dinner, you can't get dessert. And that idea you can't listen, or even if you weren't hungry or you didn't want to eat, but you had to eat in order to have the end. And that concept of not intuitively listening to your body, even if you are a child.
Nah, it's not great, right? It's not great. And we've talked about kind of the challenges of parenting today, and most of us are just going off either how we were parented or trying to do it the opposite way, right? It's either one or the other. Whereas when it comes to food, we're not in the same food environment that was there 30 years ago, and we do have new knowledge, but it's It's hard, and it's hard for parents to trust themselves and to trust children, even from a very, very young age. Any talk that I do on infant or toddler nutrition, I always say that they are far more intelligent than we can ever hope to understand or give them credit for, and they learn so fast in order to survive, and don't underestimate the cognitive development a 6-month-old has, and how much they are aware of the food environment that's around them and that they've been absorbing for 6 months. And I know that's not easy because they can't talk yet, but that doesn't mean that they don't understand, or that they're not going to start to flex. Hey, if I don't like something, and I say no, what's going to happen? And veggies are tough because they're not as nutritious. They're not as palatable as our other foods. And I do think there's still that element of kids are aware their parents really want them to eat, so they kind of narrow in on that, as I said, as a way to do that. But there's no magic quick fix when it comes to encouraging children to eat vegetables. It's long, slow, repeated exposure with good divisions of responsibility, and they will come around. But it's I say to parents, you've got to strap in until at least 5 for that, which is a long time. It's a long time. Yeah.
I'm interested to know, when we talk about parents that might override kids or toddlers when they're saying that, I'm hungry, I'm not hungry, or I don't like that. In the long term, can that affect a child and what their relationship is with food, whether they then enter environments where they then overeat or they undereat because they didn't intuitively listen when they were younger?
Absolutely. You'll have to forgive me, I'm not sure what the statistics are right off the top of my head, but it's about 90% at least of all biological females will have some form of disordered eating. So that's not an eating disorder, that's disordered eating. And that is still heavily weighted on biological females, but we are obviously seeing that a lot more common now in biological boys as well. Because right from a very, very young age, especially in those first 1,000 days when it's most impressionable and all that cognitive wiring is starting in the brain, it's all of that stuff has been laid down. And so children are right from the beginning, you're right, being taught to not be instinctual eaters. Most of us as adults still are not. A lot of the work that I do with mum's nutrition is actually not about what they're eating. It's about unpacking all of that wiring. And, some of that's like 30, 40-year-old wiring, I'm hungry and it's 9 o'clock at night, but I shouldn't be eating because it's 9 o'clock at night. Why not? If your body's telling you that you're hungry, you should eat. All of those shoulds. It's So yes, it was my very long way of saying yes.
Yeah, wow. It is. It's funny how everything at such a young age can influence you, even when you're older, and then older, and then you become a mum. And looking at when you're pregnant, is that essential to get in the relevant nutrients as well?
Great question. Do you know what's even more important is what you do prior to getting pregnant? Because where you're at the moment of conception, and we know this from peer-reviewed academic research, is a massive consideration and potential risk factor for your baby moving forward. And the reason we say prior to conception is because for a lot of women, they don't know that they're pregnant until 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, in some cases 3 months, right through that first trimester. But definitely things like blood glucose and insulin resistance and maternal weight, which I know is, again, it's a very delicate topic, but maternal weight and BMI at the time of conception is a significant risk factor for gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, birth complications, and then those things in a roundabout way for the baby. And this is, as I said, like literally at conception. But yeah, in terms of pregnancy, and actually in my new pregnancy book, I talk about, look, this is and I say, like, I have to be really straight, this is a time you need to focus heavily on like your nutritional intake, because you are literally fueling the growth of your baby, and that will have long-term ramifications, as well as for you as a mum, in terms of your ability to carry the load of pregnancy, birth, and what I call the ultra endurance marathon events that is parenting beyond. Yeah, and it's not just a mum's role. So just to be clear, and I say that in my pregnancy book too, it's all the people that are around you. You know, again, we can't put that heavy weight of responsibility on the mother alone, even though she is the one that's carrying the child. I actually talk about something, having a baby prep squad, and because for many or some women now, they're choosing to do motherhood on their own. So it's it's not just their responsibility, and having a baby prep squad of people that are on your team is one of my tips for that. Yeah.
It sounds like as well that it is such a stressful and it can be so overwhelming for parents and mothers in particular. How do they get through just the mental health of that whole experience?
We struggle. Research says that we struggle. Again, I'd have to double check my stats, but the risk of or the rate or the incident of like mental health challenges for a woman from prior to conception during pregnancy, it sort of goes from about 10 to 11% right through to about 24-25%. And then, like we know statistically too, after a baby is born, 15 to 20% of all new mothers will experience postnatal depression, and that's of the recorded number. So it's going to be significantly more. And I have had my own experiences of, struggling with both depression and anxiety over the last 10 years as well. And it's not an easy conversation at all. And that's coming from me, who works in public health. And I think it's because one of the reasons is that we separate mental well-being and physical well-being. Whereas it's all well-being. It's all well-being. And when we look at mental well-being, we also kind of go, well, either you've got it or you don't. And it's like, no, it's a whole continuum, the same as our physical health, right? We don't say with our physical health, oh, I'm either like I'm good or I'm not good. It's like, well, I might have an injury, or I might have a bit of a cold, or I might have like an autoimmune condition that I'm managing, and it's all seen as in one. Well, same with our mental well-being. It's not, well, either you're good or you're not good. There's a whole continuum there, and there'll be periods where you are more vulnerable as well. And all I can do, at least from my position, is to at least open that conversation up a little bit. I've read so many pregnancy books in preparing, and I've spent 3 years on this pregnancy book, and hardly any talk about mental well-being at all. And I'm like, how? Yeah.
Wow.
So I do in mine, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
I do. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And any final or lasting tips or lessons that you've learned along your own personal motherhood journey that you could share to any mothers or parents out there?
Just do you. truly. Just do you. Everyone struggles. It's hard every single day. Anyone who tells you that it's not, just quietly, they're lying, because it is. It's the hardest job on the planet, you know, and there's always new challenges and there's always things that you're stumbling through, but doing what's right for you, regardless of everyone else that is around you or might say something, and that includes your closest family, is the most important. And it's actually the one thing that we would want to leave our children as well. So even though it's really hard sometimes going against the status quo, that's what we want for our children as well. So yeah, just do you.
Absolutely amazing advice. Thank you for sharing that. And where
Welcome.
can people find you? Where can they find you? They follow you on socials.
Yeah, so yeah, my website. So just chuck in Dr. Julie, it'll come up, and I'm on yeah, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on TikTok. Yeah. I am. I've come to this world. So yeah, and I do like obviously a mixture of like personal things as well as educational like videos and reels and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah.
And your books, where can people?
Oh, yep. My books are, so we actually ship globally, and we've got a fast international carrier, but I am also on Kindle and audio, which you can get from Amazon. And depending on which country you're in, Amazon does print on demand, and a few which may be more cost effective or cheaper than through my website, but generally we try and keep it even. I think we've got free, you guys are Aussie based, eh? So we actually have free shipping over $75 anyway to Australia. So yeah.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing
You're welcome.
your story, and congratulations on your own personal journey and what you're doing in this space. It's absolutely phenomenal that you can help so many people out there and help unwire a lot of those traditional beliefs that have been instilled in a lot of people, and hopefully little by little there's change being made there. So congratulations on that journey, and thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I hope so. I hope so.
Well, we can do it. And thank you so much to everyone else out there for joining us for another Secret Sunday session today. We'll catch you guys all again in a month's time, but thank you, Julie, and have a great afternoon.